Greetings, duelists, and welcome to another video. So, we're still talking about Legacy of Destruction. It is our next main booster set. We're just around 3 weeks away from the set being released. In the past week, we've talked about three main flagship archetypes that are debuting in that set. Now we're going to thread into the territory of supporting themes. And one theme that I have not spoken about in this channel, and I feel is like one of the more important themes to talk about, is Melodious. So, for those unfamiliar, Melodious is a theme that came out around the ArcV era. It was one of the first main archetypes from that era, which is the Pendulum era. And the archetype composes of a few monsters, no pun intended. And those monsters are divided into three categories. You have the Melodious Divas, you have the Melodious Choirs, you have the Maestras, and you have the Songstress. And then you have three spells and one trap. And then you have a fringe category, which are these two monsters right here, Crystal Rose and Brilliant Rose. These monsters are not Melodious monsters by name, but they do aid indirectly to the Melodious theme because it is a fusion archetype. My goal here for today is for you to understand the playstyle of Melodious, understand the game plan that it was being tried to portray with this new archetype, and how impactful of a difference does the new cards from Legacy of Destruction make for this deck. I strongly believe that out of everything that we're getting in the new set, this is going to be like one of the better archetypes out there. I wouldn't even be surprised if this ends up being tier 1 because the new cards are really that powerful. But yeah, without further ado, let's begin. So for the Diva monsters, you have Sonata, Canon, Aria, Opera, Elegy, Serenade, and Tam Tam. Serenade gives you an extra normal summon. Tam Tam can add you a fusion spell upon being special summoned. Elegy protects your monsters by card effects if she's special summoned. Aria protects your monsters from being targeted or by battle if she's special summoned. Both Canon and Sonata can special summon themselves. Sonata gives them extra 500 attack and defense, while Sonata can change the battle position of a Melodious monster. Opera is a weird one. If she's used as a fusion material, she has a lingering effect that gives protection to all your Melodious for the rest of the turn. So, the whole purpose behind the Diva monsters are either A, to combo extend, or B, to solidify your board with some of their protection effects. Elegy and Aria are the main ones for doing the protection part, as well as Opera, while the other four just serve as extenders for you to just keep advancing your plays. Now you have the Maestras, you have Mozarta, and you have Chopina. Chopina can add a light fairy monster from your graveyard to your hand. Take note, it says any light fairy. Mozarta can special summon a light fairy monster from your hand. But for the rest of the turn, you're locked into only activating light monster effects, which is not an issue for this deck because every single monster is a light attribute monster. Now you have the Songstress. You have Songstress Solo, and then you have Songstress Soprano. Songstress Solo can special summon herself if you control no monsters. Soprano, upon special summon, can return a Melodious monster from your graveyard to your hand. And if she's used, if you want to fuse, you can use her as a fusion material or use monsters on the field in general. So basically, she's a walking fusion spell that can also recur monsters, that making her like one of the linchpins of the deck. And the reason I say that is because Melodious is a fusion-based archetype, and you have, at this moment, before their set release, we have 3 fusion monsters. 2 of them are choir monsters, and 1 is a maestro monster. Choperta is pretty much generic for any 2 Melodious monsters, and during either player's turn, you can banish 3 cards from any graveyard. You can only use this effect while she's face up on the field. Take note, this detail will become very important later on, because there are ways, or there will be ways, of resummoning her or replacing her face up onto the field. Having a mass banishing effect is just incredibly powerful this format. Like, the best 2 decks in the format are extremely graveyard based, so having an effect that can just mass remove from either player's graveyard is actually really, really strong. You have Bloom Prima, which is basically a double attacker, and then you have Bloom Diva, which is a damage a damage mitigator, as well as like just a strong attacker, because it just destroys the monster in battles, and you don't take any damage from battle involving this card. Bloom Prima has a niche of being able to retrieve a Melodious monster if this card is sent to the graveyard. This is going to be very important for us to learn, because after showing you the new cards, you will see this recurring theme more than not. We have Bloom Harmonist. Bloom Harmonist, upon link summon, can discard 1 card, special summon 2 Melodious with different levels from your deck to the zones this card points to. Also, you cannot special summon for the rest of the turn except Melodious monster. Scratch that, during the turn. So this has a strong Xeno lock, and that's very important to note, because it does influence the way you play this deck. Because you will have some plays or combos that you do not involve your Melodious monsters. If a Melodious monster this card points to is attacking, your opponent cannot activate cards until the end of the damage step. That's also really good. Basically, if you're facing, like, for example, something like the Tempai Dragon deck, and you're going second, they don't get to trigger while you're attacking. So that's a very important note. So now that you know about all the main deck monsters, let's talk about the spell and traps. Ostinato is a fusion spell that can fuse directly from the deck. Movement Solo can special summon a level 4 or lower Melodious if you control no monsters. Fortissimo can give an extra attack boost to a Melodious monster, and you can destroy Fortissimo itself or send it to a graveyard to actually perform a fusion summon. The fusion summon has to be monsters from the field. And then you have the only trap card, which is Melodious Illusion. This makes your monster unaffected by spell and traps, and also gives it extra attacks during the battle phase. So now that you know what the main Melodious monsters do, we should talk about like the playstyle of the deck. Basically, what you want to be doing with your Melodious monsters is just summoning your fusion monsters, but at the same time also get your beneficial bonus effects from your Diva monsters. So a typical end board will probably look something along the lines of just controlling the blue Harmonist, alongside stuff like, for example, Aria and Elegy, and just have like your fusion monsters on board alongside this. This becomes a very sticky board to break. It basically, you have a Magic Spectre like board, and to this day, boards that have both destruction and targeting protection are very, very hard to get rid of. And that's where Bloom Prima comes in, because she triggers upon being removed or sent to the graveyard rather. Meaning that if there are other ways of like removing this from the board outside of the protection that these two provide, she gets to trigger. So there are three problems Melodious are facing right at this moment before the new support. And then with the new later support, those problems are either mitigated or they are becoming like way less of an issue, and this just solidifies the playstyle like a lot more. The first issue that Melodious have right as of right now, like with this old support, is there are no real one card combos in this deck. This is a fusion based strategy. The best play you have in the deck, right, as at the moment, is Ostinato. And it's not even Ostinato's effect to fusion summon, it's basically Ostinato's end phase effect to blow up the fusion monster and just recur your fusion materials. Another issue that Melodious have is that the deck is incredibly slow as in its win condition. Basically, you want to pummel your opponent with your fusion monsters, but like outside of Soprano and outside of Ostinato, there are no real easy ways to fusion summon in this deck. One other way to do it is by using Bloom Harmonist into Tam Tam to just recur like polymerization, for example. But take note, despite Bloom Harmonist being generic for fairy monsters, she hard locks you into Melodious the turn you activate her effect, meaning that there are no real fairy monster extenders that you can play in this deck that can fulfill this card's condition outside of your Diva monsters. So this is a 2-card combo deck that just at best ends on a fusion summon or the setup of Aria plus Elegy, and you're committing multiple cards towards that combo, and you're susceptible to hand traps because we're in a super heavy hand trap format. Now that you know what Melodious were previously doing before this new support, let's talk about the 3 new cards right here. So we're getting 2 more Songstress, we're getting a fusion spell, and we're getting 2 more fusion monsters. I'll start with the main deck monsters first. The first one we're going to talk about is called Refrain, the Melodious Songstress. So she has both a pendulum effect and a non-scale effect. The pendulum effect reads, target 1 Melodious fusion monster, send 1 Melodious monster from your deck to your graveyard, and if you do, the targeted monster's attack is gained by the monster's level of what it was sent. You can only use this effect once per turn. Monster effect. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can add 1 Melodious monster from your deck to your hand, except Refrain. If a Melodious fusion monster is special summoned to your field, while this card is face up in your extra deck, you can place this card in your Pendulum Zone. You can only use each effect once per turn. So one good thing about this card is that it does add another monster. So now you have a searcher for the archetype. We did not have that beforehand. Obviously, we need to talk about the other pendulum scale, but this being a pendulum scale itself also helps with one of the big issues that the deck has, which is just relying on multiple cards in order to just mass summon into your fusion monsters and mass summon into your protection. Now that you have the ability to pendulum summon, that really helps with that condition. And it also helps the weird hands where you have multiple Diva monsters. Because if you remember, like some of these Diva monsters activate when they're already summoned, while others just give you extension. But the ones that give you protection, for example, like Elegy or Aria, and the one that grabs you a fusion spell, like Tam Tam, They can all be pendulum summoned now within the archetype, and that already gives you like a lot of wiggle room for like solidifying your end boards. Sending a Melodious from the deck goes hand on hand with both Soprano's effect and Chopina's effect. So Chopina and Soprano can just grab Melodious monsters from your graveyard. So just having that effect on a fusion scale makes it very beneficial because it gives you the ability to indirectly just add those monsters to your hand. Now that we know about Refrain and her role within this archetype, let's talk about Couplet, which is the second fusion pendulum scale. You cannot pendulum summon monsters except light monsters. Also, this effect cannot be negated. So basically, this is like the Clifford monsters. You are hard locked into only pendulum summoning light monsters. You can add one Melodious spell trap from your deck to your hand if you control only Melodious monsters. You can only use this effect once per turn. As of right now, the only Melodious spell trap before the new one would have been Melodious Illusion. So this just becoming a walking +1 in a pendulum scale is not that bad. It's also a scale 9, which kind of warrants is like summon lock into light monsters. Most of the Clifford monsters are scale 9, so it's kind of fair for them to have the restriction. Now let's read the monster effect. If this card is added to your hand, except by drawing it for your normal draw, you can reveal this card, special summon one level 4 or lower Melodious monster from your hand or graveyard. If a Melodious fusion monster special summon to your field while this card is face up in your extra deck, you can place this card in your pendulum zone. You can only use each monster effect of Couplet once per turn. So essentially what this means is, upon being added, this is very similar to Snake Eye Poplar, but instead of summoning itself, it summons another Melodious. And it's very cool because it can summon from both hand or graveyard, and it does not target. The other thing that's really good about this card is that just being a scale that can add cards already gives you like extra bonuses. So you can already pretty much tell that this theme was made hand in hand. That you want to add Couplet with Refrain, and then you want to use Couplet's effect to summon like a Diva or another Songstress or a Maestra. Well, it has to be not a Maestra because all the Maestras are above level 4, but all the Divas and Songstress besides Couplet are around level 4 or lower. Now let's read the last card, and this is Melodious Concerto. Melodious Concerto reads, fusion summon one fairy fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand, field, and or pendulum zones as material. If a Melodious fusion monster is sent to your graveyard while this card is in your graveyard, even during the damage step, that's very important, you can place this card to the bottom of the deck, then draw one card. You can only use each effect once per turn. So, the first thing about this card that makes it very incredible is that you can fuse from the Pendulum Zone. This card is a lesser powerful fusion spell than Ostinato. However, Concerto being searchable by Couplet, as well as being able to use Couplet from the from the Pendulum Zone, and let's not forget, both Refrain and Couplet can trigger their extra deck effect if a monster is fusion summoned. That kind of makes Concerto a really strong fusion spell. Also, being able to draw a card if a fusion leaves the field is also very strong, because if you remember Bloom Prima that can grab from the graveyard, Concerto can chain block Bloom Prima or vice versa, and you can net yourself like extra advantage if your fusion monsters start leaving the board. So now that we talked about the main deck monsters, let's talk about the fusions. So we have Bacha, the Melodious Maestra, and we have Flowering Etoile, the Melodious Grand Choir. Bacha reads, your Melodious fusion monsters' activated effects cannot be negated while you control this fusion summon card. You can only use each of the following effects of Bacha once per turn. If this card is special summoned, you can special summon one Melodious monster from your deck. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target one Melodious monster in your graveyard except Bacha, special summon it in defense position. So this card is incredible. The first thing to know about this card is this monster helps with protecting from negation, not only from activation, but actual like negation itself. So hard negation cards like Siphon Gear Gamma, like stuff like Solemn Warning, some cards like Solemn Strike, Iron Thunder, like stuff like that are just not functionable with your monsters. Also, this summoning from the deck is a very, very big deal because this can summon Aria and give protection effect to your entire board. This can summon Elegy, and that makes it protection from card effects. This can summon the Tam Tam, which can give you a fusion spell. That can summon you can summon the Soprano with it, and the Soprano will be able to just help you perform a second fusion summon. And take note, when this card is sent to a graveyard, you can reborn another fusion monster. So you can also pair this up with Refrain and her Pendulum Scale effect whenever you send a Melodious to the graveyard. You can also summon Refrain from the deck with Bacha's effect. And since you probably will have already a fusion material in your graveyard, you can use Refrain to add Couplet, reborn another monster, and just becomes a snowball effect of multiple monsters that you have on the board, while also being able to be protected from negation with other fusions. This card being able to reborn after it's sent to the graveyard means that by any means, shape, or form, you get to perform the special summon. Like even being sent, for example, your opposing opponents like the Maximus effect, just to give you one example, also triggers this card. This getting Kaiju also triggers it. Overall, really, really strong card. Now we talk about Flowering Etoile. Flowering Etoile requires a Maestra monster. So this is important, and this is the reason why we separated the three categories of Melodious monsters in the first place, and two other Melodious monsters. Quick effect, you can banish any number of Melodious monsters you control until the end phase. Then you can return up to that many face-up cards your opponent controls to the hand. You can only use this effect once per turn. If this face-up fusion summoned card in its owner's control leaves the field because of an opponent's card, you can special summon one Melodious monster from your deck or extra deck, except Flowering Etoile. So this card is also incredible. The first thing about this card that makes it really, really strong is that it can dodge like your opponent's cards. Like for example, let's say for example you have the Etoile and you summon like the Bloom Harmonist and you want to use Bloom Harmonist effect. Well, Bloom Harmonist is a bad example because you need to summon on the zones. But let's say, for example, you summon Tam Tam, or you try to use Sopranos effect, or you try to use like other monsters, and your opponent just wants to like negate your stuff or just target your stuff. You can use Etoile, just dodge those effects, and not only that, but it also just jumps cards out of your opponent's hand. This also makes it so you can dodge stuff like Nibiru, dodge like multiple destruction effects. This card itself can float, so this card just being able to summon a Melodious from the deck is also really, really strong. This has 2800 attack, which is a very good attack stat. With Refrain's effect, you can just bump her up to even like 3800 attack or even higher. So overall, really, really strong effect. So now that you know what all the Melodious cards can do, let's show a few combos. First, I want to give a massive shout out to Brian, aka BTG09. Not only did he provided me with all the Melodious cards, but he showed me multiple one card combos. He showed me multiple combos that you can do with this deck. They also provided me with ways to show you how to interact with your opponent's interruptions, which is very, very, very helpful. So again, thank you, Brian. Without further ado, let's show us the combos. So this combo involves Ostinato. Basically, Ostinato is going to be sending specifically Refrain and Soprano. That is going to summon Bacha. Bacha is going to summon Chopina. Chopina is going to grab Refrain from the graveyard. We have not normal summoned, so we're going to normal the Refrain. Refrain gets us to Couplet. Couplet is going to reveal herself. Couplet is going to reborn the Soprano. Now you're going to scale it. Since we control a Melodious and we only control a Melodious, you can add the Concerto. Now we activate Concerto, we fuse Couplet from the Esther deck and Refrain from the main deck, as well as Chopina from the graveyard, from the field, and we summon the Etoile. So now you have negation protection from Baka, and now you have other layers of protection with Etoile, and both these fusion monsters can float if they are both sent to the graveyard. And now both skills activate, so we have full Pendulum skill. We fusion summon into Choberta with Sopranos effect, and now Bacha is going to special summon back Chopina. And we grab Girgiano to our hand. We now use Chopina's effect because this is not a hard once per turn. And we're just going to add Soprano again. And then we can special Pendulum summon Soprano. And that's going to summon Blue Harmonist. Blue Harmonist is going to special from the deck. And we special both Aria and we special Elegy. So you don't have a lot of follow-up. Take note, this Girgiano is the discard fodder for Harmonist effect. However, if you look at this board, nobody can be destroyed by battle or card effects. Nobody can be targeted. Choberta is a disruption that can banish from the graveyard. And Etoile is a disruption that can just bounce your opponent's pretty much the entire board, because you can just banish all the Melodious monsters. And she does not target. And if you end up using Etoile by bouncing away Choberta, Choberta comes back, and then you can banish 3 from the graveyard again. So against very heavy graveyard heavy strategies like Fire Kings, Snake Eyes, Tear Laments, stuff like that, this card is just going to be really, really strong against them, especially after you being able to reuse it multiple times in the turn. So that's it for combo number 1. Let's show you another combo. This combo involves either Refrain plus a discard, or it involves movement solo. It's basically one of each. We're going to use movement solo. Solo is going to summon Refrain. Or we can just normal Refrain. Either way, Refrain is going to add Cannon. Canon can special summon itself. We just summon the Harmonist. Harmonist is going to summon Couplet and Songstress, Soprano. We now use Soprano's effect. We grab back Canon. We fuse into Bacha. Both pendulum scales will be placed into the pendulum zone. We summon Chopina from the deck because of Bacha. Take note, Bacha does not have a level restriction on what Melodious you summon from the deck. Chopina can grab back Soprano. We have the ability to send Aria from the deck. We're now going to use effect to add Concerto. We're going to Pendulum Summon. We're going to use Soprano. We're going to use Concerto. And then Bacha brings back Aria. And now we have the protection from Aria. So again, targeting and destruction protection. You have the banish from Chuperta. You have a Twel's effect. And this was all 1.5 card combo. So you will have multiple cards in your hand to work with. And we've already established that this deck already has a good amount of extenders like Serenade and Cannon and Sonata, just to give you an example. So even if you get hand trapped, like at one point, there will be instances where you just can keep going and just have your board. Speaking of hand traps, let's show you scenarios where you actually get hand trapped. So this is where you get either Vadered or Mournered or Impermed. We're going to use Bacha's effect. So it's important to note, if you get Veilered or Impermed or Ghost Mournered, you need to summon the Bacha in your extra monster zone, because that will give you the ability to summon Gravity Controller. And through that disruption, Bacha can trigger. Trigger can resummon Refrain. Refrain will add Couplet. Couplet is going to reborn. Is going to reborn Soprano. You're going to tribute summon over the Gravity Controller. And then you're going to use Soprano's effect, because Soprano's fusion effect is not hard once per turn. You summon into the Blue Mist. Take note, if you do this combo, you cannot activate Harmonist effect because you did summon a non-Melodious monster this turn. The only reason the Harmonist is in this game state is because she is going to give us the ability to fusion summon into Chuberta. And then both Pendulum Scales trigger. And then you add Concerto. Concerto can summon for Etoile. But again, this is a one card combo. And it was against one more hand trap. So it goes back to the scenario that I brought up, where you just have multiple cards in your hand. So what happens if you do use these hand traps? So we have Bacha again. If you get Gammad or you get Herald of Orange Light, and Herald of Orange Light is going to be a common card in this deck because all the Melodious monsters are Fairy type monsters. The Bacha will just trigger its graveyard effect, and then we'll go back to the first combo that we did. That being said, you have the line to summon Chopina. Chopina is going to add Refrain. Refrain is going to trigger. We're going to summon the Blue Mist. This is going to be our discard fodder for the Blue Mist. This is in the off chance that we did not make Gravity Controller. We're summoning Soprano. We're going to summon Chuperta. We're just going to rescale everything. We're just going to grab Concerto. We're going to fuse for Concerto. And then we end up on Etoile. So Etoile plus Chuperta through one of these hand traps. Let's show you what happens under Droll and Lovebird. Droll and Lovebird will probably going to be a common card that you're going to be facing against, because this deck can play Prosperity, and this deck does have multiple ways of adding cards, like for example Refrain. So let's pretend we did Prosperity. We got Drolled. We're going to Ostinato, and notice how we did not send Refrain nor Couplet to the graveyard. There's no purpose in getting to Refrain if Refrain is not going to add you anything outside of just being a pendulum scale. That being said, you're going to summon using Sonata and Soprano. That's going to summon Basha. Basha is going to summon Chopina. Chopina is going to grab Soprano. We're going to link away into Blue Mist. Blue Mist is going to trigger. And the really cool part about this combo is that you can chain block Blue Mist effect with Basha's effect, meaning that you, if in the off chance they have Ash Blossom and they for some reason they're not Ash Blossom Ostinato, you can protect your Bloom Harmonies from being Ash Blossomed. So now you just summon from the deck. Again, we're not summoning Reframe because we are on the draw. You're going to use Soprano. We're going to grab Sonata. We're going to fuse into Etoile. We're going to fuse into Schuberta. And that's pretty much like one of the combos. We're going to show you another scenario. So Ostinato again. This time we will summon use Reframe. We're going to add Chopina. Chopina for Refrain. Refrain into Couplet. This is our first add. So basically this combo is before the draw actually resolves. That's the reason why we sent Refrain to the graveyard. So we're going to Couplet. The draw is going to be Chainlink 2. We're summoning Soprano. Soprano is going to summon Etoile. And then Basha is going to summon back Soprano. Chopina is added to your hand because of Soprano's effect. We're going to summon Blue Mist. Blue Mist is going to summon from the deck. You summon Aria, and then you have Soprano to summon Schuberta. And this is basically the Schuberta Etoile combo, but you end on the protection effect from Aria as well. Let's see what happens on the Nibiru. Nibiru is pretty much like one of the bigger hand traps to worry about. Basha into Chopina, Chopina into Reframe, Refrain gets summoned, Refrain from Couplet, Couplet to trigger, and we're at the Nibiru range at this point. Now this is our fifth summon, and this is like the Nibiru zone. If they don't nib here, you full combo. If they nib here, basically you have Bacha. So you're going to scale them both. You get Nibiru. Etoile dodges everything except for the Bacha. The Bacha summons back Soprano. We're going to do Concerto. We're going to add Soprano with Chopina. We're going to summon Schuberta, and Etoile comes back during the end phase via her effect. I guess we have one more replay, and this is going to be either solo or Refrain by herself. So Refrain is going to add Couplet. We're going to scale the Couplet into Concerto for both. We're going to Bacha, and we're going to do both scales. So again, you're dodging Ash Blossom with this combo. You get to summon Chopina. You get to send from the deck, and this is the part of the combo where I said where that Refrain can just combo off with other cards, because you can refrain something to the graveyard and then reborn it with Bacha, or you can refrain something and then retrieve it with Chopina. So Chopina adds back Aria. We're going to Pendulum summon. Link summon. We're going to use Harmonist. We're dumping Aria. This is the reason this is a one card combo. We're going to use Concerto's effect in Chain. So again, you're dodging Ash Blossom with this effect. You summon from the deck. You're grabbing back Diva. You're grabbing back Aria rather. You're summoning for Schuberta. You retrieve back Soprano. Again, not hard once per turn. And then you resummon, and you get to Etoile. So this is all just a one card combo with Refrain or with movement solo. So now that you saw that, I guess this is like a sample deck list that you can use. Prosperity is not a staple in this deck. However, with how acute your extra deck is with your fusion monsters, I'd say this is like one of the better pot cards to be playing in this deck if you just want to add a consistency route. Take note, if you do activate Prosperity, you cannot use Concerto's graveyard effect. I think Orange Light is going to be, I'm not gonna say mandatory, but I think it's going to be like one of the better cards to play in this deck. Just having a hand trap that can just destroy and negate is really strong. There's a reason this card was limited. Yes, it was because of Tier Element, but we don't talk about that. Uh, so I'd say with the plethora amount of starters that the deck has, like between Ostinato, Movement Solo, Refrain, you already have 9 one card starters. You have like Sonata, which can be an extender. You can also have Cannon, which is an extender. You have Prosperity that can get you to either of them. I'd say we're in for like quite a rude awakening. I think Melodious will have a place in this format. I think Melodious is just one of those decks where if you really are not careful and you don't know what the cards do, you 100% will lose because this deck can play around hand traps. This deck has a plethora of one card combos now. This Aria and Elegy are two really powerful protection effects. Like, not many decks can break boards involving these two. Etoile is just a very, very strong boss monster. Basha being able to float and also protect from being negated with your other future monsters effects is also like quite incredible. Chuperda giving you ability to just manipulate the graveyard is all very, very relevant, and she's very easy to summon. This deck cannot OTK. Technically, it can OTK, but it does require a little bit of setup. But I'd say this level of support that we got from Melodious is really, really scary. I think this is going to be like one of the better decks moving forward. One thing to take note is in the OCG, they have Maxi and Herald of Orange Light is at 1. In here in the TCG, this card is at 3, and Maxi, which would have been the biggest hand trap to worry about, is not really in the format. So, yeah, I hope you found this video informative and to your liking and understanding. Thanks again, Brian from Team The Extenders. I will post their channel in the description. This has been all from me. Keep practicing and keep dueling. More Legacy of Destruction content coming real soon.